Thanks. And well, as usual, I will also give you some tips that by now I'm sure you all are aware about the rules of virtual meetings. So I'm Gianluca Misuraga, and I will be acting as master of ceremony, as moderator for this session, trying to be the bad guy to cut speakers if they go too too long, and of course giving the floor to who want to speak. Although Arta here is also helping me and the colleagues in taking note of the questions that we encourage you to ask in the chat. So using the chat as much as possible for comments and of course questions. And but if you want to make a comment or a question by speaking, of course, you can raise your hand and let us know. So as I said, I'm here representing Inspiring Futures. I'm Vice President and co-founder, together with Pierre Rossel and Isabella De Mani that will be intervening later on. As I said, let's mute if you are not speaking, and of course you are encouraged to open your camera. So as we have a very rich menu in front of us, and it's a Friday afternoon, so we really want to close by 5 p.m., maybe 5:15. So I won't take much time, and I know that there is a lot of interest for this workshop because we've been preparing with the colleagues and also with the speakers. So I'm very much looking forward for the discussion and for the presentation. And actually, we have also the pleasure to have with us some colleagues of the European Commission, in particular our PO. So I will first give the floor to Marta Palau, if she's here with us already. And then we can also have, we will have Francesco Mureddu that will present briefly the overall OPENVERSE project. So Marta, are you there with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh.
Thank you, Gianluca. So good afternoon to everybody. First of all, we would like to thank you for attending, all of you, this workshop today. And as Gianluca presented, I'm Marta Palau Franco. I'm Program Officer at the Commission. And I'm also the Project Officer of OPENVERSE. And today I will be here listening to you with my colleague, Adelina. Are you there? I cannot see you.
Yes.
So you can present yourself.
Yes, hello, good afternoon. So my name is Adelina Dino. I'm working in the same unit as Marta, and I'm backup as project officer for this project. And what I would like to add is that the unit in which we are working in DG Connect is the unit that is in charge of the implementation of the Commission strategy on virtual worlds and the Web 4.0. So this is one of the reasons that this project is also in our portfolio. And I will be here with you today to hear important and interesting information. Thank you.
Thanks a lot to both you, Marta and Adelina. It's a pleasure to have you here with us. And indeed, this is a very important, let's say, domain for the future of, but already today, of the European digital landscape. So I will now give immediately the floor to Francesco. I will just present. You have already seen this in the web page and in the invitation and the confirmation to the participation in the workshop. So we will have two introductory presentations now by Francesco Mureddu, that is a senior director at the Lisbon Council, that is also, more importantly here, the project coordinator. So if everything goes well, will be our collective success. If the project goes in the wrong direction, it will be Francesco's fault. No, part the joke. So, but he has a very important role to give us guidance and direction. So thanks for that. And then we will have Pierre Rossella, that, as anticipated, is the president of Inspiring Futures, and we have organized this workshop together with the Big Data Value Association. So I'm sure some of the colleagues are also here in the room, and then of course we also look forward to their comments and their insights from the work that they do on this topic. We will then have 5 presentations on, let's say, kind of deep dives on human centricity by Michael Bangrover, reinforcing data governance in the virtual world by Paul Teichkens, and then we look at the Internet of Things, so one of the important technology stack, let's say, of this virtual world from Damir Filipovic, and then we look at the next generation networks from Claudio De Maio, and Isabella De Mani from Inspiring Futures will give us some insight from the work she's leading on emerging healthcare innovation landscape in virtual world. As we have, as I said, a very rich menu, we agreed to have, let's say, maximum 10 minutes presentation by each speaker, so then we can have 1 or 2, let's say, quick burning questions, but then we will try to keep some time for the discussion at the end. And as we will see in the Pierre presentation, this is the first of a series of workshops, so I hope you will enjoy and will then follow us in the next activity. So, Francesco, I stop sharing and I give you the floor.
Yes, thank you very much, Gianluca. I will briefly present the project, as we have a lot of ground to cover. So I'm Francesco Moreto, Senior Director at the Lisbon Council, Coordinator of OPENVERSE, and the initiator of the project. So the project OPENVERSE, it's open and co-created virtual worlds for Europe. As you, of course, it's focused on virtual Europe worlds, and basically it's funded under the scheme Horizon Europe. The call is a Human 01-23, supporting the emergence of an emerging human-centric virtual worlds. The project will last for 36 months. It's a coordination support actions, and we are very happy to be joined by a set of partners, very important and very knowledgeable of the subject. In fact, we have 12 partners from 5 different countries. You can see here the list of partners, so partners that are basically experts in general for what concerns the use of data, like IDC and international data spaces. Partners that are extremely knowledgeable about foresight, so for instance, Inspiring Futures. Partners working in the design and co-creation domain, Politecnico di Milano. Partners that are knowledgeable of basically virtual worlds in general, like University of Galway, VEB, XR for Europe, of course, and Big Data Value Association, and partners that are extremely knowledgeable about standards and basically engagement in general, like electricity services and Compla, and finally Martel Innovate, that is basically is extremely competent in communication dissemination standards and also in the road mapping activities. So what are the challenges of that led basically the project to exist? So basically the needs to ensure that the future virtual worlds takes into account the human-centric dimension, and that basically places this human-centric dimension at the same level of importance of the technological dimension. The need to ensure higher accessibility, freedom and control, lower barriers to entry to these virtual worlds. Need to ensure interoperability, security, privacy, data ownership in the virtual worlds, and need to ensure that social benefits and innovation are basically that are basically present in the human-centric virtual worlds that should be also collaborative. To that extent, we have setting up this coordination support action, and this coordination support action that works perfectly aligned with the needs of the European Commission, the needs and policies of the European Commission. So we are going to perform at the beginning of the project. We are performing at the moment an ex ante and then ex post feasibility and sustainability analysis of the European virtual worlds. We are going to analyze the ethical, socioeconomic, legal condition and requirements for the existence of these virtual worlds, open and human-centric virtual worlds, especially for what concerns IPR, governance models, technological trends, and emerging technological domains. We are going to collect, assess, and also display in our project real-world cases, use cases for the virtual worlds, concentrating in sector and applications that show the most relevant benefits. And we are going, of course, to facilitate and to boost dialogue and mutual learning within the community of stakeholders. It's also important for our project to target various audiences that are related to basically industry, but also academia and institutions and policy making. And in fact, the interdisciplinary cooperation of specialists is extremely important for us. We are going to cooperate with experts from robotics, computer science, education, sociology, and design, which are already present in the consortium, but we are going also to reach to basically stakeholders all over Europe and also internationally. We are also going to collaborate with other initiatives, basically the AR/VR coalitions, the XR for Human CSA, which is a very important partner for us, and that we are going to meet physically in September. And of course, all the initiatives like Next Generation Internet, the European flagships, the European Common European Data Spaces are extremely important for us in order to exchange information and data. Very core to what we are doing today is the technological analysis and forecast, and also the contribution to standards. In fact, we are going to do three kind of foresight, so technology, policy, and skills foresight. And of course, the workshop of today deals more with the technological part, so exploring what are the main application areas, and also starting to work towards the technology foresight. And finally, we're going to deliver the roadmap for open and co-created virtual worlds. The exploitable results, apart from the stakeholder community of the project, which will, of course, be fed and will continue to exist after the end of the project. We're going to produce a handbook of co-creation methodologies, an observatory which will contain all the output and outcomes of the project in terms of use cases. For instance, we are going to have a repository of use cases in the observatory. We are going to have a taxonomy and a technology watch and marketplace in the observatory. We are going also to basically to have the roadmap displayed in the observatory as an interactive web tools. Very interestingly, we are also going to carry out two experiments. So an exploratory study on existing virtual world environments, which is basically a behavioral study that will start in November, in which individuals will be able to interact with virtual worlds environments that already exist. And then we are also going to carry out a demonstration case on virtual worlds enabled robotics in order to study, let's say, human-machine interactions. Finally, we're going to basically carry out, as we said, study on technology foresight, research APR and governance, ethical and legal requirements, and we are going to provide input to the definition or redefinition, or let's say we're going to provide input in any case to industry standards and a strategic technology agenda. For any questions, please refer to me. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Francesco. And I see meantime more people are joining. So thanks. And just as a reminder, if you have any question, please, as Arta wrote in the chat, put the question there. We are now still in the introductory part, and then we will get more into the presentation of the specific cases we mentioned before. So now I pass the floor to Pierre Rossel, that is president and co-founder of Inspiring Futures. So has a long experience in exactly technology foresight by working for many years at the École Polytechnique Fédérale de Lausanne, among other things. So Pierre, the floor is yours, and we are right on time, so please.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody, dear colleagues. It's a pleasure, of course, to continue this introductory part. After being introduced to OPENVERSE, I will introduce you to the specific task of that today and in the next workshop we will try to cover, mainly to examine, identify, and analyze main domains of applications, possible gaps, and some priority concerns issues. The idea is to also to consolidate collectively the state-of-the-art analysis that conjunctly with others we are doing, but bearing in mind that ultimately it's to prepare for our own foresight tasks and road mapping for policy recommendations, and hopefully also to be useful to other tasks and task leaders if needed. The workshops will bear priority with priorities on application domains today. Illegal, I mean, all sorts of gaps, basically, and standards also next time on the 20th of August, and governance issues early October. So how do we do that? Well, we have different sourcing tracks. First, we have this 117 virtual world inventory that we're analyzing right now. The technology offer side with all sorts of technologies and technology specialists in the consortium and outside, and precisely the 3 workshops that will help us to examine the demand side, which is not an obvious task, but I will explain how we will do it. In doing that, we absolutely want to make sure that we cover strategically critical sectors for the European Union and also priorities in terms of values and sovereignty issues. The adoption gap is a very tricky issue. I will come back to it in a few slides, but it will be the main topic for August 28 also. So we'll have to come back. As far as we can see, the first scan, we are doing more scans and more correlations and categorization, but the first scan of the 117 virtual world inventory that we have, we examine it with 24 sectors of activity, which are here below, and upon 3 levels of involvement, importantly involved, moderately involved, and little involved, with different points and scoring systems, to make sure we can differentiate things. And we can see immediately that we have a strong cluster of, let's say, topics or sectors of activities covered around video games, entertainment, culture, education, marketing and retail, real estate and fashion, in addition to media also. And this covers over 80% of the virtual worlds that we have in our list today. And so this is an interesting point which I will examine in a moment, but it immediately suggests that we have also a series of other domains which are little covered or less, and even sometimes not at all almost, that we need to understand better and to understand what virtual worlds can do for them. And we'll start a deep dive series today with healthcare, the healthcare sector. But of course, in the next workshops, we will cover other such industrial needs or environment, security, etc., to make sure, and government, that to make sure that we also examine a relevant series of other sectors than the ones that are already covered by our list. So we do that as we do always with trend analysis. We have identified 15 trends today. We'll share it with the leaders of task 3.1 as soon as possible. But this has been for us an ongoing activity for the last years. I mean, the last 5 years probably. So we continue just doing the same, continue to observe and identify, emerging trends. We also need to find what are the technologies which are underpinning the development of virtual worlds, and basically AI, blockchain, crypto attacks, IoT, 6G, cybersecurity, algorithm, and robotics mainly. And of course, this is the offer side, but we need to also take care of the demand side, and this is where we need to have a deep and more exploratory dives to understand the needs of these diverse sectoral communities that we want to cover, starting with healthcare today as a sort of first example. So there's a first question, and I would like to cover immediately. Is there too much video game or too much gaming so far, as we have seen? But I think not at all. I think it's a very interesting development that we can observe, and it has been really helping a lot the development of virtual worlds. By stimulating the technological development, because the video game industry is a huge industry, and it has stimulated technology, graphics, and creativity all together, but also research on cognitive studies and interesting social problems. It's been innovative and creative not only in general, but also regarding the transactional issues such as NFTs, decentralized autonomous organization, decentralized finance, and smart contracts. So this is a very important input. It will continue. It will be importantly observed by us. But on the other hand, there is a clear need to explore also utility-oriented domains, and this is why these 4 sites are about. I mean, what these 4 sites, these workshops that we have in task 2D3 are about. And there is in this mission a need to reaffirm the critical importance of European interests, which is not obvious per se. And when I mean European interest, I mean basically 4 things: human-centric requirements, and it's much deeper commitment than what it looks like when observing what virtual worlds claim to do. I mean, it has to be analyzed, and 2 of the succeeding presentations will be about that. Digital sovereignty in convergence with EU regulatory efforts, cybersecurity, which is far from ideal so far, and environmental concerns, especially if we consider that we have a lot of blockchain involved. That's a problem. And also there's a paradox, because on the one hand, environmental concerns would mean that we try to be parsimonious, and on the other hand, there's all a drive towards attracting more users, more people towards more usage, and therefore incrementing the carbon footprint at the same time. So there's a balance to be found between these various things. And finally, we need to also be focused on open aspects, and this will be ideally covered in our next workshops, especially the 20th of August, second workshop. Now, how do we do that? Methodology that should be valuable for and valid for all the different industries that we will examine. We start as an example with the healthcare sector, but it's the same methodology that will be applied for others. On the one hand, on the left-hand side, we'll see existing applications of X reality type, mainly virtual and mixed reality type. And these are covering a huge area of investment and expertise, with the important aspect that they cover existing needs of this healthcare sector. And all this investment is really propitious to develop new tech and new services and innovations in a larger sense. And that will impact ultimately the virtual worlds that are in the centers. Now, in the center part, we have virtual worlds of two kinds. There are those of general purpose nature, mostly those covered in 117 list that we have so far, and who, for some of them, let's say about 20, 25, we have identified so far, and Isabella De Moni will speak about that later on today. We have applications in the focus sector, in this case, healthcare sector. And these are applications that are really interesting to see. And then we have specialized virtual worlds that are dedicated entirely to the sector of activity we want to analyze, and something also on the border. All of this is important to understand if we want to tackle the question of adoption. Why would these X-reality application move towards virtual worlds? And if yes, why? And if not, why not? At what cost? We need to understand that. And those who don't want or would have no interest or who are completely stable and efficient in their own terms, why is that that they would not benefit from a full-fledged virtual world status? This we need to understand, and this is why we need to engage with several communities of practice in the target domains of our deep dives, with the objective not only of understanding better what they do, what they need, what they would like to do, but to create a dynamic with them and with several of these communities of practice. That's the purpose of this sequence of 3 workshops that I wanted to stress. Thank you for your attention.
Merci, thanks a lot, Pierre. And indeed, the adoption gaps is one of the key issue that I mean we need to discuss. So we don't have yet the answers here. It's more a number of questions. And again, if you have questions, put them on the chat, or of course we will have time later also to discuss these, and also after Isabella presentation at the end, also how the methodological approach is now being tested. And also let me acknowledge that the analysis on which Piero was building in this presentation is done by the work, I mean, comes from the work that we've done jointly with the Politecnico di Milano. So I saw in the room both Ilaria Mariani and Venere Ferraro. So they made a great work. And so definitely this is just the beginning, but still already quite promising overview of the existing, let's say, virtual world ecosystem. So now, unless there's any specific question or comment, I would ask Michael to get on stage on the virtual floor. And so while, I mean, at least I speak for me, but I mean, many of us probably are talking about virtual worlds or analyzing, observing them. I understand Michael is actually making them. He's a developer of immersive experiences with virtual and augmented reality. So he has, you know, a lot of experience on the research side on this, but he's also now leading this very important project, also funded by the European Union. So he will, let's say, enlighten us on human centricity, and so how to shape the digital world in the age of artificial intelligence. So, Michael, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And we'll go ahead and share my screen and clarify that I'm leading XR for Europe, which is a partner in this other project, XR for Humans. So there's a lot of names and a lot of common interests with different groups. So we'll be talking and introducing the XR for Human project, and then proceeding into some of the more pressing ethical or conceptual ideological problems that are being addressed, not just by XR for Human, but other entities that are looking at virtual worlds. And just to get right into it, so just briefly, XR for Europe is in, as mentioned here, the OPENVERSE project, but also XR for Human, which are two very important projects for the Virtual Worlds Initiative and the Partnership Association, which is expected in the future. And so XR for Human is another Horizon Europe project that it's just halfway through. We've just completed 19 months. We have a mandate to co-create living guidance documents for the industry, for the people actually developing, creating not just the tools that enable virtual worlds, but also actually making the experience themselves, the virtual worlds, for lack of a better term. So those types of guidance documents are related to policy, regulation, interoperability, code of conduct. So these 5 bullet points here are some of the main deliverables, outcomes of the XR for Human project. One is this code of conduct. Code of conduct that would be adopted by a lot of different people. And actually part of the research too is to identify who should be adopting a code of conduct, and should it be codes of conduct, and how do they, when do they enter into the process of making virtual worlds? There's also the interoperability guidance document that is going to be created, which is highly relevant. Both are actually quite relevant to the OPENVERSE project, which is where we'll be most likely to collaborate. There's also going to be a rating system, that is focusing on ethical characteristics and metrics. And then there's also two outcomes that are not documents, but interactive points with the broader ecosystem and diverse stakeholders. It's the experience library and the stakeholder forum, the XR for Human forum. So the forum is a little bit easier to understand conceptually. It's a place for stakeholders across the board, public to institutional and private sector, to engage with one another, to exchange points and questions and potential answers to shared questions in a chat, a message board type of interface. The experience library was just released, and it's also something very interesting that I want to take a moment to talk about, because it's meant to be a showcase of the best of European XR projects that fully commit and adhere to what is going to be produced, what is going to be defined in terms of code of conduct and guidelines out of the XR for Human project. So the experience library is really going to be this place for people like the public, or for exhibitors, or for all types to discover and learn about the best practice in ethical and human-centered design, but then also a place for developers to get references, to understand if I aspire to follow these codes of conduct and these guidance documents, what does that look like? What's an example that has already done that ahead of me? But jumping into now some of just the pressing matters, right? Identification and representation, I'd like to start with, because in virtual worlds, it's we have somewhat competing and contradictory motivations. We want to have full privacy. Our data should be private, but we should be 100% identifiable to a real person, more or less by everyone at all time. And not to say that everybody subscribes to that ideology, but it frequently presents itself. People should look exactly as they do in real life. They should always be recognizable. They should not be able to hide themselves. These are things that I've heard people in policy making roles state at XR conferences, and it of course falls it elicits a very mixed reaction, because identity has very clear purposes, and for some people, the virtual world concept is uncomfortable and threatening to what they see as the value of the physical, the non-virtual world. So they often want the virtual world to just be a mirror of the physical world, and they want identity to mirror that. But as I list here, identity usually has a purpose. But when it comes down to, if we're going to talk about AI, I'll just jump down to the bottom. There was a very fascinating suggestion that when we're in these virtual worlds, of course, we're going to be targeted in the same way we are on any digital platform for customized content. Our data will be collected, we will be targeted. And when AI becomes more sophisticated in doing that, particularly in social environments, we may need protection. So do we need to have AI that protects us from other AI, and in doing so, is masking us, is creating noise around us, is making it harder for other models and other AIs to understand and define us. And that's really important to look at from a standards and perspective, because now you're starting to talk about AI engaging with AI, which you can understand is going to very quickly exponentially grow in the amount of interaction, the amount of energy required to do that. So in the identification representation space, AI, not just for targeting us, but used by us to engage with those entities targeting us or representing us in virtual worlds when we're not physically present, is a really pressing topic that needs to be focused on in a standards case. The policing in virtual worlds is also a common ethical discussion for virtual worlds. In an AI sense, it lends itself to surveillance and automatic protections, automatic harassment identification and prevention. And right now, there really isn't a whole lot of discussion you hear about the surveillance in virtual worlds. It's because a lot of companies aren't really acting on it, but it's inherent. It's an innate property of virtual worlds. So if we start having AI that is following us at all times to see that not just are we doing something wrong, but protecting us, there's a couple ways to look at that. Should AI be able to make decisions based on interpreting our behavior and others? And should we be susceptible, punished by that or protected by that? It's, again, very much a subject of greater discussion. Coming back to creator economies and trade policies. So already, this is important to make a distinction that when we talk about in virtual worlds creator economies, we're not talking about NFTs. NFTs never really were a creator economy as such. They were very speculative. It doesn't mean that the technology didn't have application, but places like Decentraland were not legitimate creator economies, like a Rec Room or a Roblox or other places are. So right now, the tools that are in there make us go a lot faster, right? We create a lot quicker. AI is going to make that faster. And what are the standards for allowing AI to enhance our creative capacity in what are inherently international marketplaces? But when AI tools are more accessible in other markets than they are in some others, then we're creating trade imbalances and trade disadvantages. So European virtual worlds that have creator economies need to incorporate trade policies as they apply to AI outside. So just conscious of time, I'll skip through. The business models are really important here, but maybe less from an AI perspective, which is just to say you have social platforms and you have community platforms. European platforms in virtual worlds to date are typically community platforms, not social platforms. American ones are free. They are social platforms. European ones usually have some type of Patreon or some type of support mechanisms. They do not collect a lot of data about you because that's not their business model. And then the most important one, perhaps, that never gets talked about is not what makes a virtual world European. That's a fun thought experiment. But the other one is what happens when a virtual world is shut down. That has happened. There has been no consequence for it. But this is really important because it's akin to a public park that's shut down. In theory, the people who are stakeholders for that park have some governmental or some representative body that takes into consideration their rights to public space. In virtual worlds, we do not have any such system and no discussions to date really around it. And then the last point that I like to always talk about specific to AI is that whenever you're in a digitally mediated environment, like any digital platform, there's always at least one or more digital mediator who exhibits something akin to godly control over that space, in the sense that what you see is determined by one or more other entities. There is no reason to think anyone else that's sharing your space sees that same thing. It is based on trust and faith. And so it needs to very much be standardized and regulated what these mediators are allowed to do with regard to presenting environments to multiple people. So a lot of things to cover. I didn't cover them in depth, but I finished there. Sorry about going over time.
No, that's fine. Thanks a lot, Michael. And actually, I see already a couple of questions in the chat, but maybe we can keep them for the discussion, unless instead there is someone that has a specific question for Michael. Otherwise, we can move. Yeah, there is actually a question on the. So a lot of platforms seem to explain they have taken care of inclusive needs. About privacy rights, but how can we evaluate how serious this is? So I don't know if this is specific for you, Michael, if you want to keep it from Matteo. Want to take this question?
Yeah, how can we evaluate how, I mean, we just, I don't know, we just ask them, you know, but the question is how many platforms are compelled to share information about their operations. Most platforms do not share any information publicly about their operations.
Okay, and actually, this is a very good assist for Paul Teichkens that will come next. That is an innovation architect from Flanders in Belgium, and is a board member of mydata.org. So I like very much in your short video, your focus is on solving societal problems of citizens and communities towards a fair and human-centric digital economy. And I think it's very much in line with the with the goal of OPENVERSE as well. So please, the floor is yours, and of course, when we talk about artificial intelligence, clearly the other side of the coin is data. So.
Yes, thank you very much for letting me have a short introduction of MyData Global today. So my name is Paul Teichkens. I'm a board member of MyData since a couple of years. MyData Global is an organization with 500 members, with about 3,000 both activists for personal data as well as
Sorry, Paul. Maybe you can put it in slide
presentation mode. Yes,
presentation mode. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Yes, thank you. And so MyData Global currently.
Oh.
You're on mute.
Yes, I am. Okay now, can you hear me?
Yes, sorry, it was my mistake. I wanted to mute myself and I muted you.
Yeah, no problem. So our community is a global NGO based in Finland, supported by the Finnish government and a number of societal organizations. And we are a human-centric organization that wants to empower the citizens. And so we have currently 38 operators, MyData operators, which are personal data intermediaries that are functioning in a number of sectors. And so over the last 10 years, MyData has been very active in setting up a number of services. Let me see. Yes. And so what we do, we focus on empowering the citizens. We want to go from the rights they have to actionable rights, to make sure that things like the GDPR enables citizens to actually get their data, to data access requests to big companies, and then organize around the opportunity of improving their life. So we help citizens with their life moments on housing, on jobs, on energy, on mobility. And we have established currently 38 trusted data intermediary operators. In the links, I will share the presentation, of course, you will find a list of the use cases that already are being developed and also live since a couple of years. And so why do we want to do that? From a global perspective, especially in Europe, we think that if we look at the latest Digital Decade report, we saw a decline in market share of global ICT in Europe of 50%. And also, of course, sovereignty, which is an important subject here, we are for 90% dependent on non-EU infrastructure. And so we believe that as MyData, we have to fix this. We have to fix this, and as a MyData organization, we also believe that our personal data and securing it and making sure that the context is shared in the right way enables us to solve some of these sovereignty issues, especially with AI now coming up. So we participated in the EU data spaces from the beginning. MyData is part of the Data Space Support Center, and in the Data Space Support Center blueprint, which is the blueprint for the data economy in Europe, we introduced the concept of the trusted data intermediary. So the data intermediary service providers, in which you have data intermediary service providers for personal data, but also for altruism that are now defined as data operators in Europe. And so we work on digital twins, and also that's why we decided to volunteer to share this OpenVerse project because we believe in the opportunity of securing and enabling data sharing in the right way. At My Data, we believe that we are at a unique moment in history in order to regain our sovereignty as Europeans, but also to realize our transition ambitions, of course, with respect of EU values and ethics, which are core to the European operators. And so empowering the citizens throughout their journeys, from when you are born, throughout youth and education, your adult life, and also the seniors that need attention and help with healthcare. And a number of also critical crises and emergencies, there is a lot of opportunity to improve around water crisis, around energy crisis, around a number of crisis and emergency areas. And so on data privacy protection, the trusted data intermediaries of My Data, they are certified and they are audited by the organization, and they have transparent data handling. They act as trusted data stewards, and we, of course, use all of the latest privacy preserving technologies, pet technologies, in combination with data spaces and a lot of the recent knowledge around that, in cooperation with a number of research institutes such as Fraunhofer, such as TNO, such as IMEC in Belgium, are working constantly on what we call citizen-centric technology and citizen-centric consent management as well. And so enabling between the 38 operators that we already have, interoperability between these personal data, secure data sharing is an important factor. And in such a way, the connection between the My Data operators and digital twins and cities, we are now part of, for instance, the work groups around minimum interoperability mechanisms. The MIMS mechanism by the Open Agile Smart Cities are an important factor in which we will define MIMS 4, which is personal data exchange for connecting the data of the citizens to the city, but also MIMS 5, which is around ethical AI and connecting personal data and privacy to the algorithmic transition. And so Europe has now set up what is called the EU Recognized Data Intermediary, and also the EU Recognized Data Altruism Organizations. And in those, in the list on the European Commission communication around that, you will find a number of certified data operators, which is growing all the time, and in which there is a fully audited list of people that can really adhere to some of those requirements that Europe has set up. And so the My Data operators, we started with personal data stores. Personal data stores where, for instance, Tim Berners-Lee Solid project is running, in which a number of European cities and governments are looking at pilot implementations at the moment for enabling a semantic personal data store for the citizen, which is one of the enablers. Semantically opening that data and connecting it to the virtual world is one of the ways to connect through to the cognitive digital twins that we are looking at. We're a partner of the Open Wallet Foundation. We have a number of operators that are now developing some of the digital personal wallets and eIDAS 2.0. But also an emerging field is personal digital twinning. Personal digital twinning and edge AI towards personal AI agents that can help connecting to that. Some relevant cases, we believe currently there are a number of data commons initiatives in Europe, which is the CSA on digital commons has just started end of last year. And we believe there are opportunities for connecting the local digital village twins that are now emerging. I've put some examples also in the and some links to, for instance, in Germany, Borchel-Etteln is a village of the CEO of Fireware and before and now the CEO of GaiaX, who have set up a digital village using the Fireware platform. And also Tampere in Finland is experimenting with connecting personal digital data, personal digital twins to the ecosystem of the Tampere metaverse. And so in this way, we are looking and we are constantly learning and evolving. And that's why we are a co-creative community with 3,000 very active, open co-creative professionals working in the Slack of My Data. So I would invite anyone to join the Slack of My Data. And so we look at global organizations such as Tools for the Commons, for instance, which is a South American started organization around rethinking the token economy and the governance model that are now emerging. But it's too long to continue this whole conversation. Some more impactful, relevant initiatives for OPENVERSE is that within the live moments that My Data operators are focusing on, from My Data to children, My Data for health, and My Data for skills, we see a lot of opportunities to onboard and to connect trusted data to the virtual worlds that are being developed. And so on the left side, you see Citizen Data Exchange, one of the European recognized data operators, data intermediaries for altruism, is Datalog in Spain, in Barcelona, in which the citizens share all of their utility data such as energy and water with the city. And also the city of Lyon, for instance, is experimenting with that kind of energy data management. Also the Waag Foundation in Amsterdam is experimenting with that and scaling solutions. We believe on the right side, there is now the EDICS, so cross-border European member state-powered EDICS, European Digital Infrastructure Consortia, that are being formed for digital twin and towards Cityverse is already being established in Spain. The mobility and logistics, the large language models, and a number of other EDICS are being formed, and we believe that this is an interesting opportunity to connect also from the virtual worlds, because we see an evolution towards connecting our personal data to the emerging analytics landscape in which the cities will now have the means to share the data within their context of their digital twins, and being able to run scenarios in a citizen-centric way. And to round up my presentation, we see priority sector demand in skills and AI. We set up the data space for skills, and we connected to Gen AI to find more suitable jobs, more relevant results for people, and that is, I think, a very interesting evolution to follow. In health data, we have a patient participation program, European Horizon IDAVA project, which connects and automates the personal data to the healthcare and the personal digital twin of the citizen. And we have about 11 existing and emerging health data initiatives by about 10 operators in Europe. On mobility and digital twins, there is an interesting opportunity to onboard personal data in the mobility data space that is being deployed, also in the data space for smart cities and communities, DS4SCC. And in cooperation, of course, with Interoperable Europe and with IDSA. Special mention to Sitcom TEF for AI. Sitcom TEF for AI is one of the 4 TEFs, test and experimentation facilities for AI in Europe, in which we are experimenting with AI sandbox. For instance, this is just one case. ANPR camera data is very sensitive, and we are there doing learning on AI personal data. And we believe that at My Data, we're now developing a trained with consented data concept, which is the next generation of how can we fix this AI sovereignty in Europe. And finally, the digital humanism, digital commons call coming up. We believe that this will help us connect better and share data with a human-centric focus. In the previous presentation, we have given some input on how the My Data operators in the My Data organization and its members could enhance the OPENVERSE initiatives on personalizing, creating what has been referred to our previous colleague in the presentation, which is very to the point, connecting personalized avatars, which connect to my real profile. You have to, of course, be sure that it's me connecting to that. And also data-driven storytelling in urban, for instance, in the data space for smart cities and communities, the city of Eindhoven would like to use urban planning and all of the digital twin information they already have of the city to predict where people could live in the future and where there are new opportunities for building new housing, taking into account a lot of the personal data, but also the surrounding data, and enabling this sharing of that data in a simulated virtual world would actually make sense and save a lot of development and study costs. How do you want to build it over there? So that's, I'm over my time. I know, my apologies for
Yes.
that. And so this is the last slide. I'll stop sharing, and I thank you for allowing me to present today.
Thanks a lot. And indeed, I mean, we didn't want to stop because it's so interesting and very rich, in fact. And I'm sure we will discuss, I mean, of course, the data and digital commons, the role of trusted intermediaries. This is something really important. And I mean, let's not forget all this. And I think we will keep getting questions and comments, and then we will have hopefully some time for discussion at the end. But it's very good also input for our analysis of the projects you are mentioning. All the initiatives are all very exciting. So from that, I say after AI and data, let's move now to Internet of Things. That is another very important element. So we have the pleasure to have Damir Filipovic with us. Hi, Damir. That is the Secretary General of the Alliance for IoT and Edge Computing Innovation. So really, let's say to the edge, I would say. And clearly we can see how the different technology need to really get integrated for ensuring that the virtual worlds then can operate in a European way, let's say. So Damir, I give you the floor, and please.
Thank you very much. So let's start. So first, we did by end of April one, let's say, paper about Edge IoT industrial immersive technologies, and what we heard from other colleagues before. Pierre made a very good overview of what are the areas of use, and we were talking also about health. So our focus is really on the industrial, let's say, applications. So we're not talking about entertainment and what is usually, let's say, somehow linked with the commercial term metaverse. And basically, our idea is to really show what is the, let's say, convergence between IoT and Edge, AI, digital twins, what we call immersive triplets, and then various types of connectivity, IoT and software. And then, of course, you see that there is also element of spatial computing technologies, which will be important in some industrial applications. And what I think it's also important to mention there, it's not just about Edge or IoT or what type of the technology or software or, let's say, data manipulation, so to say, will be used. It's also about connectivity. And what I think it's useful to mention that Commission is working now on what they called 3C concept, which basically would link cloud, edge, IoT continuum, which of course there is always element of AI, with connectivity, meaning with networks. So let's say telco world, and I think this is a good progress. I think that Paul mentioned cloud edge, some projects and so on. So you see that there is already quite a lot of links between data space that is coming technologically out of that, like IoT and other. And then, of course, this element of the, let's call it virtuality with digital twins, AI operations over those data, and then basically software that comes on top of it. Now, what we basically think about that is that these industrial immersive technologies are really fusing and converging several technology enablers. And you see basically the ones that we started to list there. And of course, this is not exhaustive list, but this is at least our starting point from Edge IoT, AI, Web 4.0, digital twins, immersive triplets, Internet of Senses, AR, VR, MR, XR. And this, I think, of course, that many of you are quite familiar with most of the terms, but I think it's good to put it all in one place in a sense to really remind us how actually this is also rich, what comes there, and to have a sort of an idea how to kind of structure it, all of it, because these layers are very important. And I think that there was also one question in chat about these layers. I think this is quite important to take into account, and also to, let's say, sort out, let's put it in our minds, what are the terminology, because you see there is a metaverse, omniverse, multiverse. It's quite important to really understand this and their interconnection basically there. Now, what you can see, what we kind of were taking into account is, of course, we are, let's say, coming more on this right-hand side in the sense of IoT to provide basically this, let's say, technologies, we can say it, or let's say even systems to work with it. But you see on the left-hand side what actually comes into play there and what needs to be taken into account. And you see there is also, as I mentioned, connectivity, but there are also things about like AI, Web 4.0, trustworthiness, and so on, and generative. So these are all new elements that will come, let's say, into play. Then also spatial computing. This is quite important element because there will be also a lot of AI there and links to data spaces. So it all kind of sits together. And then, of course, we have edge because things will move to the edge with the devices and also with their, let's say, computing capability of handling data closer to the user. And then on the thing side, you see there is edge, intelligence, and again, autonomic, ubiquitous, hyper-connected, mesh, immersive. So you see a sort of the link between the internet and things coming somehow into play there. Now, on the immersive technologies, you see basically how this is, so to say, both layered and kind of structured. This was at least what we were kind of thinking on as a starting point. And of course, we know that this may not be everything and not include everything, but this is at least starting point when you have, of course, the physical reality, virtual reality, augmented, mixed, and then digital in the various verses. And then you have extended reality. Just kind of conceptually to put everything into one, let's say, image. And then on edge IoT immersive technologies, now we are coming to the sort of the layers that I was mentioning, from physical worlds, cyber worlds, digital, virtual. And then you see various type of the, let's call it, uses or kind of outcomes that you can come up with, like avatars, IoT, physical, digital, virtual, cyberspatial, immersive. And you see also the stack of various layers and also a bit of technological things that you need to have when you are kind of thinking about this, from edge and AI to basically various interfaces, IoT of senses, blockchain as well. This was also mentioned. And then, of course, there is a lot of questions and issues related to all of it, but this was a sort of the stack putting there. And then you see also what is important, like optimization, low latency, and so on. And this is why I was also referring to the networks, and I think Claudio will cover this a bit later as an important element, because of course you can have whatever you want, let's say in the device, in let's call it edge, IoT, AI, let's say layer or part, but you also need to have a network, and networks need to be able to handle also virtual world applications. Now on the industrial immersive technologies, these are basically the list that we came up as something that is kind of important from our point of view. And we think that this will be a sort of the complementary to what was actually also mentioned from other colleagues. So from Internet of Things senses, triplets, edge computing, spatial computing, AI, DLT, spatial generative AI, then spatial computing, industrial immersive system of system integration that becomes also quite important. Trustworthiness, standardization, also very important part. And I would say this is never-ending story. And then what are the future trends and challenges? So that was our, so to say, starting point. And I started with this because, of course, when we are talking about the applications, we need to know what we are talking about, or what is the sort of the structure behind that. And basically, we are now starting to work on the applications, so IoT industry, edge IoT industry and immersive applications, where we will try to kind of explain sort of the overview of the applications, what is the potential for the convergence, and then to cover examples from various sectors, coming mainly from, let's say, manufacturing. And you see that this would be manufacturing and production, predictive maintenance, quality control, workforce training, and then supply chain and logistics. If there will be a possibility, we would like to extend it also to the health domain and also to mobility. But we will see how far we will be able to go. We plan to have more about this somewhere in September timeframe. And then, of course, to show what are the benefits and challenges, future trends and opportunities, and then provide some sort of recommendations and final thoughts. Because one thing is what you can offer, let's say, from the technological point of view. The other thing is what will find its application, in which domain, and this can change, because what you may think it's in one domain may find, let's say, further use in other domain. Various use cases, and then I would say piloting, testing, and scaling up of those solutions will be also very important. And to add also that we shouldn't never forget that there will be also potential for some regulatory intervention if needed. We have a stack of, let's say, legislation in Europe which were done in the last 5 years, like AI Act, Cybersecurity Act, Data Act, and so on, which is great basis. But I think that only from the application we will have to see if something more is needed or not, and then of course standardization. So I think this is a sort of the more, I would say, introductory part. We were not able at the moment to show you more concrete, let's say, cases, but somewhere after September, I think that will be possible to really go into concrete use cases and applications in various domains to show how that actually may look like from the industrial point of view. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Damir, and indeed there's a continuation with what the other speakers were mentioning, and the need also to do some experiments, some sandboxing, and of course now that we are also the regulatory framework that is say starting to enter into force, see also what are the, let's say, the implications for innovative applications. So thanks a lot, and I'm sure this will spark debate, and we really look forward also for further, let's say, insight from your analysis. And so now we come to Claudio De Maio, that is a research analyst at Trust IT Services, that is also a partner of the project. So thanks, Claudio, and he will actually bring us into another domain that is very important for development of virtual worlds, of course, that is the next generation network. So 5G, 6G, how this actually can, let's say, what are the implications to boost, how they can boost actually the application in the virtual world. So Claudio, the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Gianluca, and thank you very much to everybody for having me today. As you know, we are partners of OPENVERSE, Trust IT. However, I'm not personally involved in the project, so I'm not, I should say, exactly researching virtual worlds right now. But as Damir suggested in his own presentation, I'm talking about one of the stacks, let's say, in the value chain, which is the network side. And this is because I'm involved, among other things, in one of these CSA projects called SNS-IS, which I'm using the template today, which is doing, let's say, a bit of innovation management with the various use cases that have been used and developed by the SNS community. Among those, there is a strong presence of extended reality, virtual world use cases. And so this is why I'm here talking to you about this. So very quickly to just introduce a bit this, again, layer in the network layer in the virtual worlds context. Both 5G and 6G, which is not yet there, but let's say beyond 5G technologies, promise or provide already ultra-fast speeds, obviously, ultra-low latency, massive connectivity. And so this is revolutionizing device communication. And there are some key features that are really relevant for virtual worlds, such as many of them have been touched already. I thought to be a bit, let's say, academic in this first presentation, just because I wanted to bring you to the topic, but it will be a bit repetitive. Obviously, the higher data rates that have been already discussed extensively today, real-time data transmission, customized network services, enhanced mobile broadband, ultra-reliable low latency, and all of that, right? The role in XR is enhancing XR, right? Providing, lag-free VR experiences, digital overlays for AR, blending physical and digital worlds for MR, and all of that. So the real-time interaction, the high-quality content, the scalable deployments, and so on and so forth. What we are doing in the context of SNSIs, essentially in the context of SNSIs, we've been developing this tool, which is called the Vertical Engagement Tracker, which is a systemical mapping of monitoring of SNSGU use cases. So the use cases developed by all the research and innovation projects of the SNS community, also the innovation action projects. So those that work with higher already TRLs, let's say. And so in this way, we map and try to understand what are the common trends. We do gap analysis, and we also do sort of a landscape, right, analysis of what's going on in the community. And we have done this in the past already with 5GPP through the creation of a verticals cartography. We have slightly improved in the new version, adding a couple of new features, but essentially the blueprint is there. And I have to give credit to my former colleague, Stephanie Parker, who kickstarted this activity. So we collected use cases, okay, so far from 29 projects. It was a huge work. It's just phase one project. The SNS joint undertaking, it's a really large effort with a lot of resources and also a lot of projects. So these are just the first phase projects is 29 out of a total of 34. In which 3 have already declared that they have no vertical engagement, so they work with more technical KPIs, whereas 1 is still not responded. But overall, we managed to almost gather all the use cases that engage vertical sectors, right? And these are the vertical sectors. And if you look at this very easy to look graphic, media XR, extended reality, so virtual worlds related use cases are actually in second place, which to some extent also reflects sort of a trend that was already there during 5G development. And so essentially, it is one of the most traditional vertical sectors. It's one of the vertical sectors that have been more extensively explored in different ways. And I will show you in the second part of my presentation how this has been done so far. A bit more of quantitative numbers, sorry about that, but I think this is relevant. So these are the name of the projects that are developing use cases dealing with the extended reality, virtual worlds. The flagship project XX2, not surprisingly, is the first one. And the 2 other projects that are FIDAL and TrailsNet that have 3 and 2 respectively use cases are actually larger scale innovation action projects. So there's also a continuity, I would say, between what was going on in 5GPP, where these technologies were kickstarting, and now projects that are trying to, let's say, bring them to higher maturity levels. So there is a continuity there, if you can see what I mean. The type of experiment, okay, that this project are carrying out right at present, obviously, because we are at the beginning, it's mostly about simulation, proof of concept, and demonstrations, although there are already some trials, some pilots, and even prototypes. And this is what I was telling you before. So essentially, there are very also mature use cases being developed already. Let's not forget that the SNSJU as a whole started only in January 2023. So we are only 1.5 years into the whole program. And these phase 1 projects that kickstarted in January 2023 already have interesting use cases that are relatively at least aiming for mature results. However, the declared technology readiness level, it's still obviously in the initial stage. But in my experience, these numbers dramatically shift through the end, let's say, of the project. So one of the challenges that we have is also to go back to the projects and ask them, hey, how is it going? What's the maturity level now, this use case? Is there any update that you want to provide? And this is also going to change probably the experiment type that I showed you before. Let me get back to that. So this is the one. Probably we're going to see more trial pilots and prototypes as these projects further evolve. About the location, this is just an interesting concept. I would say that the location showcases that obviously there are some countries that have more sort of tradition for this type of telco industries, but also Greece is also normally at the highest, because also there is no national initiative in Greece, as in countries like Spain, Italy, also Finland, very strong, Germany, the Netherlands, France. So obviously you have more emphasis in European projects, but overall there is a good distribution in terms of different geographies targeting virtual worlds use cases. And we come to the second part, so the trends. What are these projects doing? I've done a kind of a bit of a broader analysis, finding common features between them. I think the main sectors, subsectors, would say, of this vertical are entertainment, sport, right? So the idea of providing a detailed view and enhancing fan engagement, right, through low latency VR applications, so the multi-screen experience. The cultural and educational experience is also very important. So there is also a learning emphasis to that. So the idea of enhancing the engagement, for example, of museum visitors or historical site visitor through immersive AR, but there's also more sort of a learning emphasis, as you'll see very soon. There is the idea of social integration as well. So supporting communication, integration of people, for example, with disabilities through immersive technologies. But there is also, and this goes a bit into the healthcare topic that I believe is going to be discussed soon today, the enhanced learning I was talking about before, so the holographic telepresence for interactive and realistic remote education, and in also industrial education. So it touches, there is an example of a sort of a cross-vertical application as well, going from the XR to the Industry 4.0, right? There's also the collaborative and interactive platforms, the idea of doing, for example, virtual team building through holoconferencing, immersive XR environments to produce 3D shared video content, which is in real time, so latency being very important there. And we come, by talking about latency, we come into the immersive technologies applications. So we have extended reality, XR, so combining virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality, right, for a full sensory immersion. So the idea of having a full sensory immersion, which is also complemented by holographic telepresence, right? So the high resolution 360 virtual presence, which enhances remote interactions, right, in various settings. There is a networked music performance, the idea of enabling live collaborations from different locations through virtual reality, right? Competition offloading, leveraging edge computing in this case, to enhance AR experience by offloading graphical computations from the user side, live 3D content production, allowing performers to produce and share 3D video content in real time. To the network requirements. So what are the main network requirements? And we are a bit repetitive here, but I think this is interesting to stress here, the low latency, right? So that there's a critical need for synchronized haptic feedback and real-time interactions, which would ensure that there is an efficient 3D content production, right, in interactive platforms. The high throughput, which is needed for streaming high-definition content, right, and ensuring a smooth XR experience. To utilize also obviously high capacity, right, and optical technologies for effective data transmission. Once again, which are also, I mean, and another requirement of the previous two is network densification, obviously. So you need cell-free technologies to support high data density and low latency requirements, and also very, very important, residential broadband, right? You need to improve home broadband services through advanced to ensure advanced 5G and 6G application throughout, scattered geographies. Not only obviously the urban context come to mind first, so the smart city, which is kind of a horizontal vertical sector, as we all know, but also there is a need to connect also the unconnected, right, the most remote areas, part of cohesion policies, right, for DEC, very, very relevant. Other requirements that are that come to at least that surface in the 20 use cases that I have sort of analyzed for you here. Security and resilience. We already discussed this, I believe, in the previous panelists at least touched upon this topic. For sure, Damir did. So there is a cross-stack, let's say here, connection, the idea of mesh architectures and blockchain, right, to ensure high availability, but also security, right, and privacy in XR applications when you enable them through 5G and beyond 5G networks. Smart pricing, not to underestimate, right? There is a need to use advanced algorithms for efficient network management and also resource management, right? So you need to give people the right, let's say, fares for the type of networks they're using. And this is it overall. I believe I didn't take too long, but I feel free to answer any other questions. And thank you so much for having me today.
Thanks a lot, Claudio. And I think, yeah, you complemented very well on the other presentations. So indeed, I mean, as you probably noticed, there's been a bit of a preparation and orchestration, especially by Pierre behind this. That's why, I mean, our speakers are not here by chance. The only thing we couldn't control, but fortunately we have Isabella, is that we have, you know, mainly male speakers so far, but this is because this is you know, also this industry is very much let's say gender bias, I would say. But fortunately, we have Isabella. It's a pleasure to have here, not only because she will give us the female touch, but she's also the CEO of Inspiring Futures and has a long experience on especially looking at the future of healthcare. She has been writing 2 important books on that, on artificial intelligence and health, and a novel on 2050. So looking in fact at the future of health. And so she will bring us now, I mean, into the exactly possible futures of healthcare in the virtual world, extended reality. So Isabella, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gianluca, for the introduction, and thank you for attending this workshop. We are now going to explore the specific issues of extended reality and virtual worlds in the field of healthcare. It's an introductory presentation of this field, and the objective is to understand the potential application and the demand side. So the first insight to have in mind are that the specific trends in the healthcare it is a field that undergo today some stress situation because of the professional shortage, with 40% of medical doctors that are close to retirement age in 1/3 of the European countries. So beside this stress situation, it is a background in many European countries. The trends shown on the slide are important to have in mind when speaking about the demand and future uses of these technologies. Some of the trends mentioned here in the slide are going to accelerate the use of extended reality and virtual world solutions, like, for example, the development of public policies to reinforce a preventive approach of healthcare, with probably a positive impact on education and wellness solutions, or, for example, the need of upskilling for workforces that will probably have also a positive impact on the acceptance of these technologies. We also have to take into account the climate change, which is a major issue. Extended reality technologies can have a positive impact, for example, with less transportation, but we cannot underestimate their own carbon footprint impact. So in some cases, also in the field of healthcare, it could become a dilemma. So in the next task of the OPENVERSE project, we'll conduct a first site analysis on each application field to analyze interdependencies and have a vision of the technologies in their context of application or use. So looking at the context, as I have just said, also means looking at the other technologies used or going to be used in the future. Extended reality is clearly part of the transformation of the healthcare sector since 10 years. It is one of the main transformative technology. It represents a new tool supporting the care delivery to patients, but also a new tool, for example, in training of healthcare professionals, for example, also in wellness therapies. just a few seconds on this slide that shows the level of maturity of extended reality in virtual world application in healthcare. We consider that we are at the level of an emerging trend. We are today with clear extended reality virtual world experiment. Also, it was said before, but we are on a fragmented market and with remaining work, for example, on interoperability, on ethical consideration. So we have a need to develop a joint vision on what virtual world should look like and enhance interoperability and encourage development of standards to give the opportunity for companies to scale up in this field. So this is, I think, an important point when speaking also about the healthcare sector. Coming back to our work at OPENVERSE, within the 177 virtual worlds listed in the task 1.1, there were at least 19 types of application that were identified in the field of healthcare. You see it on the slide. For example, virtual training for medical professionals, teleconsultation, health recovery, virtual training. So you see also on the slide some sample of companies with virtual worlds dedicated to healthcare. We see here a cartography that was produced by Inspiring Future as part of our research into the different dimensions of these technologies. We have here 3 dimensions: augmentation, simulation, and immersion. These 3 dimensions should just be kept in mind when analyzing all the identified cases in the healthcare to have also the impact of where they are applied and how they will be used. So when talking about extended reality and virtual world, the main differences that we have identified and Pierre was talking about in the introduction is that for us, extended reality tends to be more specific. For example, for a type of problem, for example, for pain management after surgery. Virtual worlds tend to be for a more general purpose, even if, of course, as we have shown it before, there can be virtual world dedicated to healthcare. What is to keep in mind here is that virtual worlds cannot develop without a strong impulse of extended reality, and beyond that, with some other generic tech like IoT, AI, for example. So from the list we've made, a first work to identify the main categories. As you can see here are the significant applications in the medical field. There are surgery and operations, physical and fitness therapy, medical education, diagnosis, mental illness treatment, and pain handling. So if we take just one example, virtual world transform medical education because it provides a realistic environment to learn from experience and practice the knowledge with interaction. So virtual worlds-based medical education proved to be more effective in some cases than traditional methods and safe for student and patient. For example, in the case of anatomy learning or social skill learning, which are 2 examples of application. Now the question is, what are the main goals and associated need to develop these technologies? And this with a focus on the demand side. So we have listed 8 main goals. The first one, educate, mainly patients in the context of preventive medicine. Virtual worlds can be a powerful tool for patient education, allowing individuals to explore interactive virtual environments to learn about, for example, their medical conditions and treatment options. Patients can also connect with each other in virtual spaces to share experiences and advice, for example. The second goal is train, more for professionals. Virtual worlds offer a realistic and immersive environment for medical training. Simulate. This technology enables physicians, doctors, nurses, surgeons, and other medical professionals for better interaction using simulation technique. Then there is the goal of cure, so being as a treatment for pain, for example, phobia, stress, pre-op anxiety. Then we can see that there's the goal of having better interaction. So extended reality and virtual worlds improve professional-patient relationship and healthcare quality. For example, they offer distant coaching, treatment monitoring. And the last one, wellness. So virtual world can also help citizens for a positive lifestyle and maintaining health conditions. So to conclude on this slide, you can have these goals for a comprehensive overview of what are the purposes followed by virtual worlds and extended reality. On the next slide, we wanted just to show the medical benefits of virtual world and extended reality in the medical field. So you can see can improve safety, reduce training costs, improve communication, reduce errors. So here are the complete list of concrete medical benefits of using virtual worlds. After this insight on the factors that could accelerate the adoption of extended reality and virtual world in healthcare with better treatment of the patient, we have to address some of the challenges companies has to overcome. On the one side, we have listed challenges, and there were also you were talking about, like data privacy, security, ethics. And on the other side, we have listed demand-side challenges like adaptation, or for example, the inclusiveness or user-friendliness. But what is to notice is that between these two sides, so the offer and the demand side, there is the topic of digital inclusion that we do not have to forget. Not everyone has equal access to advanced technologies required for these experiences. So effort must be made to address issue of digital inclusion and accessibility to ensure that these healthcare services will be available to a broad and diverse population. I think this is a very important point to have in mind. After saying that, we also have to keep in mind the implementation process. Maybe longer in the healthcare field, mainly due to regulation issues, but also due to slow implementation. For example, in hospitals, here you have the complete list. This process can take several years. So we have to keep that in mind when developing an experience of a virtual world. So concretely, what are the next steps for us? We will continuing our analysis and identification of valuable application in the field of healthcare, but also in other fields, as we said before. We will identify and interacting with communities of practices compliant with EU requirements and OPENVERSE goal. And we will undergo a foresight sequence combining our existing expertise on the future of healthcare that we have at IF and the future of virtual world. So thank you very much for your attention and for this 10 minutes on healthcare.
Well, merci, Isabella. As usual, it was fascinating and very precise, exactly spotting also the the gaps and the needs for meeting the demand side and the offer side. So we have now some time for discussion for real. So it's not like often that we arrive at the very last minute and we cannot take questions and comment and discuss. So I see already Pierre. I don't know if you want to make some immediate reaction to the presentation, just to pave the ground for the discussion, for the debate. And of course, if you want to ask questions or make comments, you can either put on the chat or just intervene, raise your hand and ask, let's say, in a real virtual manner. Pierre, you want to say something on?
No, actually, so it's not about question. Maybe I should leave time for question first. I wanted to remind of the intention of what we heard and what we want to do. So if you don't mind, it's just a very quick summary of the ideas that were put together in this workshop, if you don't mind, in 1 minute. Well, we wanted to establish a discussion mode on this application domains. We are initiating the process. It's just a first step. And there will be others to complement and deepen what we have heard. And precisely, we need to do several things at the same time. Be open to the evolution of technologies that will shape the futures, the future and the futures of virtual worlds. We also need to understand better these demand side issues and people, communities of professionals or else that we want to study through successive deep dives. And we had a series of options, not only in healthcare today, but also in the industry. And we need also to see how this convergence that several of them, the presenters talked about, to create innovation in a solid sense, not just innovative features, but innovation in a sense of building better environment to work with. And of course, we wanted to stress very strictly the importance of European values and interest as the core concern of all of this, let's say, process dynamic. And basically, we want to develop a knowledge base and an explorative debate which allows us to engage with different sectors of activity, sectoral communities of practices in weeks and months to come. So these were the criteria that shaped our casting, that shaped the way we interacted with them, and the way that we will also continue in the weeks and months to on what happened, build the findings and next steps of what we want to achieve, and open to the foresight, of course, dimensions or other connections with other task leaders in the OPENVERSE project also. So this was the package, and as just the starting point. And we are fully involved in the deepening all this. And so I hope that you understood the intention and that you took advantage of the moment. Thank you for sharing this.
Yeah, thanks, Pierre. So let's now get to the to everybody if he wants to ask any question. Otherwise, of course, I can also use the prerogative of the chair to ask myself questions, because I have many. So maybe in fact, because we didn't have the opportunity to listen from Damir and Paul after the presentation, because that's something that is quite important. That it's the fact that I mean the Internet of Things, or Internet of Everything at a certain point was called, or the Internet of Services from the other side was also always. I mean, now many years that we have been talking about it, and now it seems it's coming to a situation where technologies are mature, and but still there is a bit of worry that this is the weakest part in the cybersecurity value chain. And this is actually very much linked to what Paul also mentioned about the trustworthiness of data sharing. So maybe I don't know if Damir and Paul want to further comment on that, as they've been very disciplined in their presentations, but maybe that's an important element that actually comply with what both Isabella and Claudio mentioned about the need also to engage, I mean, disadvantaged groups of society, so the digital inclusion that was mentioned many times. So, I mean, what is your view on these very complex challenges that we have in front of us? Trust and inclusion. Who want to start? Maybe either Paul or Damir?
Yes, Gianluca, I'll take the word if I'm allowed. I think it's we are. Yes, can you hear me well? Yes. I must say that I see a lot of opportunity in connecting the professionals and my data operators. There's 38 operators that are already working in several fields of healthcare, of mobility, of skills, and that are looking at the evolutions of data spaces and city digital twins, and running towards scenarios of which their personal data intermediary services are quickly leading to the virtual world experiments and some of the technologies on the supply side that are being highlighted here as well, especially if we look at the presentation on healthcare. And so what I would suggest is that in the next few months, if there's an opportunity, I would like to onboard these professionals of the My Data community, who are, let's say, who have been on the forefront of identity and security and citizen data protection, but still not just looking at not sharing data from a GDPR and fear perspective, but looking at the opportunity of using data when you have the means and the privacy enhancing technology to enable trusted data sharing for these purposes. I think it would be an ideal opportunity to involve in the presentation. I've already consulted with about 5 operators that joined the task force from the My Data side. And so if there's an opportunity, I would love to enable that discussion, onboarding more of those professionals with the background they have in enabling and growing these personal data intermediaries, which in the different verticals have a different state of evolution. So I think that could be a call out to this community to do more work and to enable more cooperation, because we all have to co-create, and that's the vision that we have as My Data as well. So I don't know if that gives an answer to the question.
Well, thanks a lot. And actually, yeah, this is very welcome. And that's why we are here, starting with this first workshop of a series. But then when we enter into the foresight part, that would be very much needed. And that you also touched another key, let's say, key issue, the one of co-creation. So that is definitely at the heart of the core of the OPENVERSE project. So Damir,
Luca,
I see. Yeah,
yes.
please.
Thanks. I think what is also quite important, as usual, we always, of course, a lot of us start, let's say, from the technological point of view, but at the end, it's always about the use. And there is always a bit of this chicken egg issue, in a sense. Okay, you have a technology, then what are you going to do with it? How are you going to apply it? And what is the case for the users, especially when we are talking about industrial use? I think it was a really nice let's say, presentation on the healthcare. And I think one element which I find quite useful, especially with this topic of, let's say, various verses, it's also education. And this is a bit, I wouldn't say forgotten, because everybody talks about, industrial use. Of course, there will be industrial use. But even for industrial use, you also need to educate users how to use it. And it can be also in education, as education part of the things. And this is where I think it can come, plus then, of course, leisure, culture, and so there is a lot of other things. And then I also agree with what Paul mentioned. Let's really come more, I would say, from the point of opportunities. Of course, there will be challenges. There are always challenges. And I think that privacy, trustworthiness, security are very important elements. But I think that if we find technological solutions to do something, then I'm pretty sure there will be solutions for basically ensure also privacy, security, and so on. And then, of course, like I mentioned, there is already quite a lot of regulations that still needs to be implemented, and we need to see how. And this, I think, will go hand in hand, basically with technological development and actually use take up. Thanks.
Thanks, Damir. And so I don't know if there's anyone else that wants to comment on this topic. And by the way, Damir anticipated the importance of education. And we will, when in the wrap-up, we will unveil that, in fact, the next workshop will be focusing on education. And actually also what Claudio showed before was somehow, let's say, confirming some of the initial findings that we got from the overview of the most popular, let's say, virtual worlds that in fact is on the entertainment, sport, but also cultural sector, education. So these are very important area. And so I don't know if there's any reaction, in fact, from both Claudio, Isabella, and
Perhaps
Michael
I
as well.
can answer
Yeah,
the
please.
question on robotic surgery, just which is in the chat. The question is on how far do you think we are from remote surgery, allowing surgeons to operate hundreds of kilometers from the patient? I think not so far, but for me there are two issues. There's the issue of the medical impact, but also something I don't have speak about a lot is the cost. Meaning who will pay for it? Is it, for example, in this case, the hospital? Is it the patient? Is it insurances? So I think when we will talk about the business models of this solution, we have also for the demand side to take into account who will pay for it. What is the real, in the case of healthcare, medical benefit, and can we pay for it? Because as I said also in the introduction, it's not a trend, but there are strong stresses on hospital and on medical care. So we also have to take this in mind when speaking about innovation and great technologies. So I think this is also an important point to have in mind.
Thanks a lot. There is Julian Julian Adelberg from ITSA, or you can maybe introduce yourself a bit, but we know each other.
No problem. Thanks, Gianluca. My name is Julian Adelberg from International Data Spaces Association, and we're also part of OPENVERSE. What I wanted to mention is regarding the education domain. We are in one research project that's called MELO, and the aim of that is to build an educational data space. What we are experimenting in this project is actually how can you make sure that learners, and these can be experienced learners, but also pupils, can have access to educational providers and also, for example, universities, but also future employers. And these future employers and universities have to have the rights from the pupil or from the learners to share their data. There's also the topic of observability and the tracking of how the data is used, and also the consent. You can use my data if these specific terms are in case. So these are the things that we are already doing, and I think this is a good groundwork for virtual worlds. So as Paul also mentioned, data spaces and privacy enhancing technologies, this can be the skeleton, the groundwork on which virtual worlds can maybe flourish. So I'm also glad to talk about more about educational aspects. So I'm glad to come to the next workshop also.
Absolutely, thanks a lot. And I mean, we couldn't not notice that you were like calling from the space, also for the sounding and and yes, and what you have. Yeah, and well, we will tell you that the next the venue of the next workshop. I don't know. We need to talk with Francesco, but maybe very interesting one. So we can hopefully unveil this already today, because the idea is to do something hybrid. So also having a physical location and then calling, of course, for a virtual hybrid, let's say, workshop, but clearly taking advantage maybe of a more, I mean, a longer say debate on site for who would be able to make it. But I don't want to anticipate, because this is more for Pierre and in fact Francesco, if they want then in the conclusion say something on that. And also if the colleagues of DG Connect also have any comment, please this is the right time to get into the discussion. And yeah, I see Adelina and Marta that open her video. I don't know if you want to say something. No. Okay. So, well, Paul, I see raises.
Just wanted to quickly connect to the previous discussion on education also. We have, as my data operator has an Uber driver collective, so a gig economy. We have 1,000 Uber drivers in the Maze collective in Paris that have we have set up an operation where we trained the drivers to get a data access request to ask for their data with Uber. We downloaded all of their data, and then we did a simulation comparing it to the Google Maps data from the individual drivers. And so we managed to simulate over a month, and we found out that some of these drivers are underpaid and some of these are overpaid. This is an ideal scenario using education and training also of the Uber drivers, which didn't have a clue on where the data was sitting. To guide them and to do realistic scenarios in a virtual world environment. I think this could be also an interesting way to connect the gig economy aspects of virtual worlds.
Okay, interesting. This goes back to I think one of the first questions about the role of platforms and privacy and security in platforms that I think was asked at the very beginning. And there was also a question from I don't know if he's still there, Marcelo, at the very beginning, that was made very, very complex question. Maybe if you are there still, you want to ask this about the challenges to address different segments separately. But maybe Marcelo left. Was one of the first question in the chat. But yeah, I don't know if someone wants to address this, because it's true that I mean, each of us looks at this topic from its own perspective, but then what actually is required and what the big challenge is to put them together. That's what we're trying to do today, to look at the networks, the artificial intelligence, the edge computing, and so forth. So I see both Pierre and Michael maybe want to intervene as well. So Pierre.
Yeah, just very quick, not answer, but comment on this question of silo issue. I think the whole point of all the workshop sequence that we are establishing today, initiating today, is to have a matrix approach. On the one hand, we try to develop deep dives as sort of silo thinking, but on the other hand, through other angles, technologies, priorities in terms of values and human centricity, openness and standards that we will examine in the next workshop. We cross all these dives or data spaces. That's another example. We cross all these silos differently and try to find commonalities and functions that are repeatedly identifiable and with which we can work and learn from one domain to the other. Michael said that we cannot take a football team to make it play basketball, but to some extent, there are two balls game, and maybe there's something at least in common from the point of view of human centricity and EU criteria that we can reuse and learn upon from one domain to the other. And that's what we are looking for, to build a collective learning process also, and not just a series of deep dives separately from one another.
I don't know, Michael, if you want to. Can we win the Euro Cup with the basketball team?
I don't know how competitive they'd be, but you can definitely put them on the pitch. I mean, they'd get that far. But just to maybe take a response to Marcelo's question, I'm motivated because I don't quite understand what it is that he's necessarily questioning here. He talks about the layers, and he actually seems to ask why it's difficult to analyze them independently. And I think actually one of the things we're saying is that it's actually harder to analyze them together at once, because individually it's easier to isolate them and look at them. So I'm not sure if the question, because then he goes on to say, like, nowadays the main issue is technical restrictions for development, and obviously development gets easier every day, you know. So it's an interesting question, but it's not one that was clear to me exactly what he is suggesting, and that's what he's asking of us. So I would just say that I think the challenge for XR, and we're using XR oftentimes synonymously with virtual worlds, because clearly virtual worlds is a term that came out of metaverse, which came out of XR in the popular sense, if not in a theoretical sense. And we should be careful about it. But XR is going to be, in the age of AI, understood as where all these technologies converge, which means it should be aggregating the difficulty of understanding each of those software and hardware stacks. So I actually would think that his question is, I would invert his question.
Okay, thanks. And yeah, bad that Marcelo left, but we will make sure to bring him on board for the next workshops. Okay, so I don't know if there's any comments or question. I mean, maybe we could dedicate just a few minutes to actually the specific deep dive of today on the healthcare, because I think there is where we're trying to see, according to the approach that has been presented by Pierre at the beginning, how we can, let's say, look at the adoption gaps. So this is one of the key issues to discuss. And so definitely one of the issues that we see is that artificial intelligence, for example, has always been, is still seen as one of the key issues for addressing challenges of artificial intelligence. But now it seems that some of the trends are bringing a bit on a different direction. There is a bit of a shift. So I don't know if this is something that Isabella or others want to comment. And also I see also Lucas that open his mic, his video. I don't know if this is a sign he wants to say something. Yes, please.
So
And
just
then we go. Okay.
just
Yeah,
last
please.
week I was in California at Sensor Converge, which was largest expo on sensors and electronics, and also at Augmented World Expo. And actually that topic was also raised in terms of remote surgeries. And over there, at least technically, the issue has been the precision. So we require sub-millimeter precision with surgeries, and that hasn't been yet achieved in that space. So there's still a substantial amount of funding required to break that barrier. I think the minimum we achieve now is like 2-3 millimeters, but we need sub-millimeter precision, and that seems to be a blocker for wider adoption of surgeries. Once this is bridged, or bridged by AI, and again, AI and robotics seems like a solution for everything. It's not a magic wand, but it may actually, bridge the gap. But that has been raised there. Because I think that was about the gap, right? So like what is extra needed to actually bridge this?
Can I just add very briefly something to what you just said? Because we are working with Italian firms right now to explore the haptic dimension. Because when you drill bones and human bodies, the pressure, the capability for the surgeon to feel the pressure is a very important stake, right? And we are also in the millimetric challenge right now in that area. So there are a number of let's say frontier situations where we're not there yet, but quite clearly something is happening, and there is a tremendous amount of expertise and money flow also for that.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we're not getting there. I'm just saying there's still some barriers that have to be addressed, and people are on the track to get there. Also, I also visited Stanford XR, and I visited Neuroscience Lab there. I got to know the director, good friends, and they showed me some devices, very precise devices for neurostimulation using magnetic radiation, and actually they use XR there for aligning those machines. And one of the PhD students was pitching to me his idea on how this is actually helping taking the cost down, because now they use robotic arm to do it for the precision, but they say XR already is able to provide enough precision for that specific procedure. So that specific procedure does not require this surgical sub-millimeter. That the XR was enough to provide a remote procedure of that sort. So I'm just saying that some procedures that may require slightly less precision, they're already viable to be implemented straight away as XR. But if we talk about drilling bones or neurosurgery, of course, we don't want any mistakes there, right? Yeah, so.
Okay, great. So Michael, please. Yeah.
Yeah, can I just to the topic of adoption gaps, and I guess my question is, what does adoption or gaps in adoption mean for a project like OpenVerse, or for I mean our roles in it? You know, is it that we should be evangelizing in this topic, for example, you know, talking about XR should be used? Should we ever be talking about XR should be used, virtual world should be used, or should we be looking at how people are using them and trying to identify what is the way to improve their use of it? Because honestly, I'm someone who looks at this as in a generational sense. This is, you know, I'm not going to get certain profiles of people very easily in large numbers to start using a new technology to do something they have other ways to do. So while there are those who have a business purpose for doing that, and if they do good work, they do a lot of the hard work. It's not something that I necessarily have found to be my role. And in some of the initiatives I'm in as well, it's about how to do things better, and how to anticipate what we will be doing to do it better, but it's not evangelism. So when we're looking at gaps and studying why something isn't being used, I asked the question to the group whether it's to try to overcome that or to understand the you know, if there's something that's a problem that we should be addressing, but rather, you know, so that's broadly speaking.
Well, I see both Pierre and Luke want to intervene.
Yeah, can I very quickly say that because we rush so fast in the presentations, I thought I had explained that we don't look for adoption at all costs. That on the contrary, we try to understand what is at stake and what it means and what the improvement direction that are looked for, and not the idea that everyone in the world and in the future should have a headset and nothing else. No, not at all. So I thought it was clear, but it was not. So thank you for raising the question again, and I hope that this time we understood each other.
So I just wanted to add that I think that the adoption is imminent, and the best example is actually what the industry is doing. So I've been working with the financial industry, especially with Fidelity Investments. I'm a Science Foundation funded research fellow with them, and they deployed solutions on games like Fortnite or Roblox, and they are actually games. Why? Because these are actually bigger than social media. Like Roblox is I know 400 million people. Fortnite is 800 million people. This is bigger than Twitter or you know. So and there is loads of kids and teenagers that tomorrow will become fully you know righteous citizens, and able you know being able to vote and so on. So these guys will come into workforce and they will have some mindset in there. And you know they already use digital currencies on Roblox. This is natural to them to be in that metaverse or a virtual world environment. Therefore, there will be expectation for interfaces to support that. And I see this in industry. They actually think already ahead, deploying those games, but you know trying also to kind of pivot towards that audiences. I don't know if you've seen IKEA also opened a shop in metaverse and actually hired first people to work in their metaverse shop. So this has been happening also in Europe because okay, IKEA is Swedish, but I think it's imminent as the new generations are coming and growing up. Of course, this doesn't remove the problem of digital division and us more senior people being still there around, but definitely, you know, with this new workforce coming in, there will be more and more needs. So it's imminent. You know.
So let me clarify my question, because the question was about adoption gaps, not about adoption, not about should we adopt or who's adopting. There was a question that was, or it was a statement of looking at adoption gaps. Why are we looking at adoption gaps? What is the motivation to look at the gaps? Is it to fill the gaps? Well, that's why, and I'm not saying that someone is saying we need to fill it. I'm not saying that here. What I'm questioning is what is the motivation as a project to look at gaps? Because I know many people's motivation is absolutely to fill the gap, to evangelize. And I'm just wondering, is that what should be the motivation of the partners in the project? Implicitly, explicitly, why are we looking and focusing and discussing gaps in adoption?
I don't want to monopolize, but I can say something about it. But maybe somebody else wants to go ahead before me.
No, go ahead, Luke.
I think it's very important for European industry. I mean, it's not mystery that this space is dominated by American and Asian players, right? So those gaps are essential to be identified so that we can address them now ahead of time.
To fill them.
Yeah.
Is that what that's what you to
to,
fill?
ad
Okay, so
to
your
identify
motivation is to fill the gap.
and to fill them both.
Yeah, okay.
Because we don't know, and industries themselves are also very curious. I gave many talks recently about actually the challenges I see in adoption of XR by industry and governments, because I'm working with both. So there is interest because that's also a survival for many players. Many players try to survive in this new emergent reality with new technologies, whether it be it XR, AI, and combined. So definitely it is important for us as a project to identify those gaps and make recommendations how we can address them. I don't know if that's now the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Evangelism is an inherent part of the project from your perspective. Okay.
Well, I mean, but at the same time, also looking at this from a European perspective, because the idea is to also make sure that these are also addressing the values and the human-centric approach on the digital transformation. That's also, I mean, I don't know if I would call it evangelism, but it's more like, trying to make sure that the virtual worlds are, let's say, aligned with our, let's say, societal needs. But maybe Arta wants to say something.
I would call it more of economic growth and competitiveness rather than evangelism.
Right.
Just to add, okay, because I think that's a very, very hard statement, but yes, it has some economic impact in an innovative ecosystem. So I would rather call it an economic growth. So that's why we need to address these challenges. From my perspective, maybe I might be wrong.
Yeah. Thanks, Abdul.
Yeah.
Arta?
Yes, just quickly on the adoption gaps. I know that it was originally the brainstorming ideas of the title of this specific workshop, and you wanted to raise it possibly at the next workshop. So I think it will be a topic that you will develop and very soon. Is this correct?
Yes, indeed. The idea now, and Pierre, correct me if I'm wrong, is that yeah, we start with this discussion, see where we are today, the state of the art, and then see exactly what are the different application domains that are more, let's say, used, and see also what I mean, different areas that are not the traditional, I would say, but like healthcare or education, where we can also, let's say, boost the adoption of virtual worlds. But yeah, definitely something to further elaborate on. But very, very good that we have this discussion. So I think it's, I mean, that's the problem of this workshop. That's why I would say maybe for the future, we want to have a bit more time for discussion, because clearly 2 hours are are already passed, and is not enough for really entering into and diving in depth in the specific issues that are required. And then that's also why we're not just doing one workshop, but a series of workshops. So we will have 3 workshops for this first part, and then we will have 4 workshops to look at the future with the foresight. And we really look forward to have you all engaged and even more. And so I think now, I don't know if there's any other question and comments. I think we can still maybe allow a few minutes, and then maybe we just wrap up and conclude. Although I know it's a Friday afternoon, and in less than an hour there will be for who is interested in football, Germany and Spain. And so I'm Italian, so I'm not concerned, but still I live in Spain, so there will be some interest. But what I don't know. Otherwise, if both Francesco and Pierre wants to also say something to conclude. I know Marta had to leave. Oh, I don't see Pierre. Okay, yeah. Maybe we could just yeah.
I think we should not prolong too much. We will continue this discussion with different angles and the topics we evoked just a few minutes ago and next workshop. And so it's a continuing process, growing process. And thank you for all the interesting comments and contributions. And we are only in the beginning of what we need to achieve, and not at the end at all. The end of the afternoon, but not the end of the task. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Pierre. And okay, so with these wise words, I will say, okay, in fact, let's not let's say go farther than we promised to stay. And since we are also Swiss company, so let's stay to the time. We started a bit later, but I think it was a very good discussion. So a big thanks to all the speakers. So Paul that also left, Michael, Damir, Claudio, Isabella, of course, Pierre, and Francesco, and all the team that helped organizing. So Arta, Galileo, Matteo, and all the project OpenVerse. So, but also, as Pierre said, this is just the beginning. So there will be more occasion, and so the next workshop at the moment is envisaged to take place at the end of August, most possibly in Samos in Greece. So as I said, in a hybrid format, we are discussing now let's say the feasibility. So Julian, you are very much welcome, because we will be discussing about education. And then we will have another workshop that is planned for October in Budapest. And so alongside events of the EU Council presidency. So we will let you know if you are hopefully able to join us, and then we will discuss more on the governance aspects. So also legal, ethical issues that today have been already mentioned but not treated in details, and that will come, of course, very much when we talk about education, healthcare, and other application domains. So I think this will be very important. And then also to prepare the ground for the foresight exercise that indeed we'll have to go into that direction much more in details, because of course, as Lucas said, in fact, we have to look at the future generation. So they are already adopting these solutions for the good and the bad. So we really have to make clear that this is at least addressed, or at least considered, and maybe not all platforms at the moment are considered. Well, I see a very last minute question from Agatha. So please, Agatha. So we make an exception to the Swiss rule, please. Okay, I don't know if you want to ask a question yourself, or how may one get an open subscription for the following workshops? I mean, all workshops are open. I mean, in the sense that we are restricted, but we invite all people that are interested. I mean, this I would say Sava Sandir is in the name of our project OpenVerse. So you are very much welcome to join us in person or in virtual mode, of course, in the philosophy of virtual world. So as Arta said, yes, maybe you want to say something about the promotional activities we are also doing as a project.
I mean, not much. I just would like to say that we are visible. We have a website and we are active on social media. So if you don't want to miss any workshop, please follow us there, and we will always be happy to invite you if you're interested in the coming activities.
And this allowed me also to thanks again both Galileo and Arta from Martel that made an excellent work in setting up all the virtual workshop in a very short period of time also, because there was some let's say delays also, but I believe it was good. We have actually overcome our initial expectation. We wanted to have a small workshop. Instead, this was more than what we thought. So thanks a lot to all participants then and for the discussion. And as I said, this is just the beginning. So see you soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Have a nice weekend.
Have a nice weekend.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.